During the course of the evening, we're going to show some clips from your work, and we're going to have a chance for questions at the end, which you've said you're fine with.
Yeah, great.
Great. I want to start, however, with showing a clip that isn't of you, but it's a clip from a movie which features an actor that you have respected greatly. So the clip is from Woman of the Year, which is from 1942. Do you want to say anything about it before we play the clip, or would you like to play the clip and then talk about why it is?
Play the clip and then I'll talk about it.
So take a look at this, and then Brian will explain why this is fabulous.
Hello? Yes? Oh, yes, Mr. Clayton? Yes, sir. Yes, I'll be right up. He's waiting for you. Come in, Sam. Come in. Haven't you met Miss Harding? Yes, in a belligerent sort of way.
You get me first. Hello.
Hello. Now, fellows, I realize as much as anybody that controversy is a very stimulating thing. Very. And I always encourage it when someone on the paper gets into a good fight over an important issue. Always. But not intramural fights, never. It's my job to think in terms of the paper as a whole. And I'm dead sure that it just doesn't do any one of us any good for one department to wrap another. So to come directly to the point, I'd like to see you drop this business right away. How about it, Sam? You ready to kiss and make up? I'll kiss. I don't know about making up. How about you, Tess? Willing to quit?
Sure. Okay?
Fine. Thank you.
I'm always delighted to quit when I'm losing.
Glad to be able to reconcile you two. Very glad. Cooperation is the essence of efficient organization. The essence.
Isn't the sports department downstairs?
Well, yes, I guess it is, but I...
Then aren't you going in the wrong direction?
Maybe I am. Are you always much too busy?
What for?
I was wondering about this afternoon.
Sorry.
Tomorrow afternoon?
What's on your mind?
I'd like to take you to a baseball game.
Okay.
Why do you love Spencer Tracy?
I just think he's probably the greatest screen actor ever. Because he's just so in his world. I mean, he's so in it. I mean, he doesn't mug. He's comic. He has moments of great comic style, but he's sort of, there's something about him which is all about his internal work. He does it all quite internally, and it comes out, but it's always internal initially. He doesn't act for acting's sake. You know, a lot of actors act and do a number. He never does a number. In fact, he almost does a number by not doing a number. Okay. if you can understand what I mean. And I just think he is, for me, an example of what acting should be. About being present, but not being over-present.
Okay.
Just giving, you know, as I think it's Hamlet who says, you know, suit the word to the action to the word, you know. I mean, Hamlet does this great advice to the players, and it completely embodies what he is. And also, she wasn't half bad herself, as has been said, you know. So, and that relationship between the two, I mean, I just love watching their films together because they did have this extraordinary chemistry, and they became partners or whatever. And I think he is a remarkable actor, and I never ever cease to be incredibly impressed by him. The other film that's great is Bad Day at Black Rock, which he is stunning and absolutely stunning, and he acts everybody off the screen in a way, by not acting everybody the screen, he does act everybody off the screen.
Yeah.
And there's a scene in that where Robert Ryan is doing a scene with him, and Tracy is looking at the ground. He's outside, and he never looks at Robert Ryan. And Ryan is acting his socks off, and Spence is just delivering it. Boom, boom, boom. It's an extraordinary talent.
Was there a point that you went from watching his films and loving his films to analysing what it was that he was doing?
Yeah, I mean, you know, because it's so funny, especially in this country, what's very odd, because we have the theatre in this country, and there's all that sort of sense of classicalism of how you present yourself in the theatre. And I always was a little, I became quite good at it at one point, but it was like...
Yeah, that's kind of understating it. Yeah, you did fine.
I mean, I did the classical thing, but it was always you're always having to. I mean, it's like I saw Olivier do Hamlet on screen the other week, and when he did the soliloquies, he was fine because he was on his own. But when he was starting to act with something, he was doing all this kind of acting, doing all that kind of stuff that he did. You know, there you go, you know, and you're going, come on, just play the scene. He would never do that. And that's the great thing about Tracy. He was always centered. Everything he did, he always discovered the center of a character. And that's, I believe, what you have to do as an actor, so that you're not demonstrating, you're not overacting, you're not falsely pretending, that you're just being true.
In your book, your autobiography, you make a similar comment about Ian McKellen, and you say it's much more, it's performative, but then you say, well, it's just different ways of doing it.
Well, it is. I mean, Ian is, you know, he's a man of extraordinary ability, and certainly politically he has done a lot.
Yes.
You know, he really has. There's no question about what Ian has done, particularly in the, you know, the situation of him being gay and how he came out and all of that, and what he started, which was quite brave of him, really, when it was done all that time ago. But he is very much part of that, what I call that English tradition of acting, which is a little bit, you know, it's a little bit, oh God, sometimes words fail me. It's a bit presented, you know, it's a bit sort of, oh, here we are.
The phrase you use in the book, you say it's a bit front foot.
Well, it's front foot, yeah. It's all kind of, you know, and I sometimes go, just stop it. Just sit in it, let it be, you know, let the thing come through.
And is it still the case that the cradle of your acting is the Dundee Rep, that that's where it all really began for you?
Yeah. Well, I was very lucky because I started at the age of, well, I got a job at the Dundee Rep when I was 15. So I was literally mopping the stage and doing everything that you did, you know, which was take the money to the bank, which I thought was ridiculous, trusting a 15-year-old boy to take the takings to the bank every day. And they did, you know. And being a Dundonian, I would have normally scarpered with the money after the first day. But that didn't happen. And I was given trust. But also on my very first day, my very, very first day, I went to the front of the theatre, and there was a... I know my wife has heard this, so sorry, darling, I'm repeating myself. But it was quite funny, because I went to the front of the theatre, and I was coming for my interview, and the very Dundonian lady said, "Yeah, can I help you, son?" I said, "Yes, I'm having an interview with Mr. Henderson." "Ah, son, you've come the wrong way." He said, if you want to be at the front, you've got to go around the back. If you go around the back, you get to the back for the front, but you can't get to the front for the front. Just want to work. You want to not get to the front for the front. You have to go round the back to get to the front. I said, okay. She said, remember, round the back, you'll get to the front. I said, fine. So I went round the back, and I walked in, and there was a huge fight going on. And there was a guy who was swearing. I mean, he was using language which I, as a Dundonian, had never heard before. and it was Nicol Williamson.
Wow.
And he was having a row with the stage manager. Now, the tragedy is that Nicol was, at one time, probably one of our greatest, very greatest actors, but a lot of people don't know who he is, which I find extraordinarily sad. Anyway, I managed to get past him eventually, and then I got up to the landing, and witnessed this. Really, these guys were really screaming at one another and doing all that false, you know, all that stuff. And I got past, and there was a guy smoking on the landing, an actor called Gone Granger. And he was smoking, he looked at me and he said, "Are you all right, darling?" And I thought, that guy has just called me darling. And these two guys are knocking hell out of one another. Well, clearly this is the place that I have to be. And I went and had this kind of silly interview, which I remember vividly because I knew nothing about classical music, not a thing. And I went to meet Mr. Henderson, who was a very, very nice man, a New Zealander, and he said, "Do you know, do you like music?" And I said, "Oh, yeah," and I was bluffing my way, and I said, "Oh, yeah, oh, I love music, yeah." He said, "What is your favorite piece?" And I went, and I had a kind of, kind of moment which I thought, oh, Christ. And then I remembered that 2 weeks before I had been, our music teacher had played a bit of Verdi. Mm-hmm. He'd played the trumpet march from Aida. And it sort of stuck with me. And so I'm sitting there and go, he said, "So what classical music do you like?" And I went, "Verdi. I'm very fond of Verdi. I particularly like the trumpet march from Aida." And of course, there I am thinking I'm, really getting away with it. And he's just laughing up his sleeve like that.
Now look, we'll probably end up playing most of the clips non-chronologically, but I want to play one from fairly early on from the 1960s, which we were just talking about in the dressing room before. Year of the Sex Olympics has been issued now on disc by the BFI. I had only ever seen this. This is a Nigel Neal scripted work, an extraordinary work. I'd only ever seen it in black and white. But you were telling me that
it was the colour production for BBC Two. You've seen the colour photo. In fact,
I've seen the colour still. Yeah.
Oh no, the clip's in black and white. Oh yeah, See, that's what it looked like. We were wearing all this extraordinary gear. We had sort of gold makeup. We had, bracelets and what have you, and it was a big colour production. I don't know what happened, and we recorded it. We did the whole thing. It went out as a colour production. It was the colour event of BBC Two, certainly the drama event. But then, years later, they couldn't find the colour negative. So they had a black and white one, and that's what you see, and I just thought, can you colorize? I mean, is it possible to colorize something?
I think you can. I think morally you're not supposed to, but I think you can, technically.
Well, but that was what that originally was. It was originally supposed to be it originally was in
color. So we're going to show a black and white clip from Year of the Sex Olympics. And the extraordinary thing about it is, firstly, it's a very, very kind of prophetic piece of television. It kind of imagines a future in which an upper-class elite are keeping the masses downtrodden by feeding them a diet of pornography and reality TV. Yeah. And secondly...
That's true. It predicted all of that.
Go figure. And secondly, your wardrobe is hair-raising. Should we have a look?
Number 3 team, a total of 115 force.
And you picked them.
How did I know?
Where'd you get them? Out of a low drive?
They passed all that tests.
They don't know which end is which.
So cool, man.
Well, okay.
Fine.
What happened?
Well, it's on.
Matt and Deanie?
All set to go.
How can
Smash! Next round coming up.
Next, we lead off with last night's champs, Milet Hassler and Lee Pilly.
No, you carry on in that job. Get your new assistant.
Okay.
You cozy in it?
I like to be boss, make no bones.
Next, from Area 16, Silica Koenig and Cosmo Bauer. Both great performers and hot tips for the Olympics.
Oh, I better be getting back.
Back to your jumbo hunt. Not be easy, that.
Yeah?
Producer for the new show.
Yeah. Got a lot of checks to do, then got to pick the right man.
Nobody want that job.
Top job.
But no let-up. A non-stop show. It's got to be all night, all day, week by week, maybe year by year. I know. I did kind of invent it.
Yeah. Yes, you did.
Sure, don't tell me. Whew, what a job.
And Liza McGregor and Sir Tompkins.
Does it bring back good memories? I mean, it is an extraordinary piece of television.
Well, it was directed by probably one of the best directors I ever worked with, Marianne Elliott's father, Michael Elliott, who was a theatre director. But actually, he did a lot of work in television in the 50s and the 60s. I did, what did I do with, I did something else with him, and I can't remember what it was. It was a classic play with Tony Lumpkin. What's the one with Tony Lumpkin?
We'll come back to it.
We'll come back to it. Anyway, I'm at that age now where I can't remember a fucking thing. Sorry. So anyway, yeah, it was just an extraordinary piece of work, you know. It really did predict reality television.
It did.
And that was what made it so extraordinary. But as I say, it was supposed to be in color, which is bizarre, seeing it in black and white like that.
But did you think at the time, this, because there was a certain amount of fuss about it. Some people their noses were put out of joint. People thought it was, you know, very, very aggressive television for the BBC to be doing. Did you know at the time that it was going to be a cause célèbre, that years later it would be released on DVD by the BFI and people would still be talking about it?
I could never have predicted that in a million years. I mean, I thought the show was good. I thought it was a very pertinent show because it was a, you know, it was about, you know, it was a cautionary tale,
yeah,
you know, in that sense. So I did have a huge respect for the piece, but I never thought it was going to be what it became, because it wasn't a question of what it became, it's what we became as a result. You know, we got involved and we loved reality television and we loved that kind of television. You know, it became very popular. And this is the sort of extreme example of it.
So I'm going to do a sort of conceptual leap now. Do you think there is any connection between the fact that you did that in the 1960s and recently Succession, which is the story of a media mogul who, particularly as the series goes on, we find out more and more that it's to do with, you know, just producing the stuff to, you know, to pay off whoever we need to pay off and keep whoever we need downtrodden. There are weird comparisons between what's happening in Sex Olympics and what's happening in Succession, aren't there?
Probably. I mean, I think that's an extraordinary journey that you've made, but...
That's the nicest I've ever been told off.
No, I wasn't telling you off. Actually, Mark, I was rather impressed. But yeah, I think considerably. I mean, you know, that family, oh God, what a fuck up that family is. They really are. You know, I look at them all there. Oh dear.
Okay, tell us about Logan Roy. Tell us where does he come from? Where does that character come from for you?
Well, Logan Roy, I remember when I was first approached by it, I was on they called me, Jesse Armstrong called me from Italy, and Adam McKay called me from LA, and I was here, I was in London, and they said they were doing this show, and I immediately knew it was going to be a success. I thought, wow, because in a sense, you know, all these dynasty shows, like Dynasty, like Dallas, they were always very popular, so I thought that was very much in that kind of vein, without the, obviously, deep political consequences of this show. And I thought, no, this is going to be something. And I actually suggested, writers, that I play Scots.
Okay.
I said, you know, he could be Scots, old Logan Roy. You know, I said, it could be a Scottish name, Roy. And Jesse said, oh, no, he can't be Scots. He's got to be American. He's got to be American. Adam McKay, on the other hand, who we would pronounce it Mackay, but he is of Scottish, well, he's not, I mean, 100 years ago. Yeah. And he thought it was a good idea. He liked the idea. So there was this, anyway, it wasn't that. So I played it, sort of American. And, but then I discovered, and we'd recorded the first, with the pilot, which was his birthday, we'd recorded some of it. And then we got to the birthday party, and then in the birthday party, it said, born in Quebec, Canada. And I went, well, I haven't been playing Canadian, I've been playing American. So I was kind of a bit taken back by that. So I thought, oh, well, you know, obviously Jesse Armstrong geography isn't too hot. And so I thought, okay, I'll accept it, I'm playing it now. So finally, on the 9th episode of the first series, I'm sitting there with Peter Friedman, who plays Frank, who I'm always firing and rehiring. You know, he's not in the photograph. Anyway, so I'm there, and he comes up to me and he says, "Oh, Brian, I've just done some ADR on your." He said, "They've changed your birthplace." And I said, "What do you mean they've changed my birthplace?" He said, "Oh, you're no longer born in Quebec." I said, "Oh." I said, "So where am I born?" He said, "Oh, I don't know." He said, "Oh, let me look." And he got his device out and he went, "Oh, yeah, here we are. Somewhere called Dundee, Scotland." And I said, "But that's where I was born." He said, "Well, that's a coincidence." I said, "That's a hell of a coincidence." I said, "Because nobody's told me that I was born in Dundee, Scotland. And I've been playing this for 9 episodes, and suddenly I'm a Dundonian, you know." And so I went to Jesse, and this was so typical. So I said to Jesse, "So, you've changed my birthplace?" And he said, "Yeah. We thought it'd be a little surprise." I said, "It's a hell of a fucking surprise." I said, "I'm acting one thing, and suddenly you tell me I'm actually something else." Anyway, we just accepted it.
The reason that it managed to work as well as it did is that, you know, obviously there are contemporary media parallels, but it does have a Shakespearean edge to it.
Oh, yeah.
It's, I mean, you've been talking about Titus and Lear and all those things, so it was kind of sort of in your blood, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he's one of those universal characters. I mean, he really is, Logan. He's self-made, I think completely misunderstood, a brute, certainly. He's certainly a brute. But then he does have, and his only problem, his only problem is he loves his children. And that's his biggest problem. If he didn't like his children, his life would be a lot happier.
Okay.
But he actually he loves his children.
Okay, but do you mean loves his children in the King Lear sense of loves his children?
Well, even King Lear loved his children.
No, that's what I mean. I mean, yes. Do you mean...
Yeah, I mean in the sense that I have grown-up children, which I love on occasion. I love my children. I think they're, but they can be pain in the arses. I've got 3 boys, and they can be difficult at times. My daughter is wonderfully crazy, and I love my daughter, but the boys can be a little tough sometimes to handle. You know.
Let's see a clip of Logan and his daughter, and I think this does connect to the Lear analogy. Let's have a look at this.
Hey, Dad.
Siobhan. Oh, they told me you were here. This is unexpected.
Oh. Yeah, we were doing a check-in with the memo, and then you fled the country, and then you fled London.
Well, my schedule goes through Carrie. We've had some emergencies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're kind of elusive, Dad.
Why didn't you tell me you were coming?
Well, because, honestly, I was afraid that you would run away again.
I've never run away from anything in my life.
Can we just talk about the memo?
I owe you a response.
Oh, you've not read it?
Siobhan, I have an entree the size of Argentina.
Okay. Actually, you know what? I need to ask. Is it still me?
What?
Oh, come on. Dad, has anything changed? Because, it feels like it has. And when you said it, it felt really real.
Uh-huh.
And I know you haven't always liked my words, you haven't always been happy with my words, but come on, we can discuss.
Uh-huh.
You know that I want this and that I can do it.
Mm-hmm. Then why are you fucking me about?
As in?
Putting your name in for the Pierce job. Talking to those backstabbers, huh? What's that all about? If you're going to be coming in here talking a whole lot of crap to your father.
Who told you?
Who told me? It's all over town. Nan Pierce is shouting it like a war trophy in the city.
Okay, well, you know what? I had to keep my options open, Dad.
Oh, yeah, I see. Because we have a little fallout or something? We're a family. We can have our bumps. I don't expect that.
Well, it's not that I was...
Family, Siobhan! If you don't understand that, then fuck off. Sarah Snook, isn't she good?
I think that scene is astonishing, and I think that scene can hold its head up with, you know, the best theatre that you could see. I think it's directed very simply because they know that it's happening with the cast, but everything that's going on in that scene absolutely feels rooted in Shakespearean ideas of conflict and tragedy.
Yeah, I think, you know, now you bring it to mind, it does. She's a very complicated girl. She cannot keep her mouth shut. That's her biggest problem. And that's why he's talking about. That's what he's talking about. That the family, it stays within the family. And that's why trust is broken. Yeah, she was the appointed one. She was the one that he wanted to take over. But she destroyed it by doing as what she did with the Pierces, with everything. So he now realizes that that daughter that he loved so deeply has become completely undependable. And that's the stuff that's there in the script, that people, if you look at it a couple of times, then you will begin to see how that scene works. And I think that's the greatness of the writing, because there's also an ambivalence about it.
You once said that you would annoy the writers by saying, remember, you're comedians.
Yeah.
But of course, you know, it is technically a comedy, but it's a tragicomedy, and the tragedy is that, as you say, he's desperate to pass it on to his children and wants them to want more than just something from him.
Yes, exactly, and he wants them to come up with some idea of where the firm is going to go. Nobody ever talks about that. None of the kids ever talk about what the future might be in terms of the firm, and he sits there because he doesn't overstep himself. He just says, bring it to me and I will see what happens. And they always bring it to him in that awkward fashion that she just did.
Do you find that when you're doing television work, does the stuff that you did in the theatre help or hinder? You know, Michael Caine famously did the thing about, you know, the it's totally different on camera than it is on... Do you agree with that, or do you feel differently about it?
I disagree with that. I think the truth is the truth in any language, in any form, in any statement. You have to tell the truth. That's what the theatre is about. That's what... Oh, that's my son, my real son. He's 53 now. Anyway, sorry, that threw me. What was I saying?
You were saying that the truth is the truth in any format.
Well, the truth is the truth in any format. And I think that... I remember Richard Harris used to go on about, excuse me saying this in front of everybody, he used to say, Jesus fucking Christ, Michael fucking Caine, have you seen that fucking thing, the thing with the eye? Keep the eye still. What the fuck is he talking about at the eye? And I said, well, Richard, that's for you and Michael to sort out. I'm not going to get in the middle of that argument.
Your Shakespeare on stage is, you know, world renowned, and most famously, you're widely regarded to have done the definitive Titus Andronicus. And you were talking about the performance being like a kind of broken statue in terms of the makeup. But you also said something which is really surprising, because anyone who's seen Titus Andronicus, it's a blood-soaked, hideous orgy of vengeance and violence. And you said, yeah, but don't forget the vaudeville.
Oh,
what do you mean by that?
Well, there's a lot of laughs in it. I mean, it's bleak as anything, but it's also ridiculously funny. It's ludicrous. I mean, it really, what I believe about Titus, it comes between, it falls between this, the comedic and the tragic. And in the middle of that is the ludicrous.
Okay.
And life is so ludicrous, especially, this is a guy who's lost 40 of his kids, sacrificed them to Rome. He comes back thinking he wants to retire, and it's all crazy. And he assumes madness, like Hamlet. Now, the great thing about Titus is that every idea that appears in Hamlet, in Othello, in Macbeth. All of the ideas are played out in Titus Andronicus. Shakespeare plays with all those ideas that then he synthesizes in other plays much better. But this is the rough diamond, and that's why I think it's a great play, because it is that, it's the kernel of Shakespeare's work. And he did have this kind of wacky, ridiculous kind of slightly sadistic sense of humor, which he plays to the hilt. I mean, also Richard III was written at the same time, so Richard III also has a bit of that quality as well. And that's also to do with the young writer getting his rocks off, sorting it out,
right,
but not kind of getting the form like that he got with, for instance, with Hamlet and later on with the other plays.
And do you think the key to playing any character is being open and sympathetic to them? Because you've played a number of what we will say broadly villains, but you've never played any villain just as a villain.
Well, no, because people aren't just as a villain. I mean, there are a few exceptions like Donald Trump, but then he's not a villain, he's just senile, really, I think, and should be, taken away somewhere and put in a nice little home and taken care of. But, don't you agree? I think so.
Everyone agrees.
Everybody agrees that he should be taken care of.
Somebody said that
thank you.
Somebody said that what they should do is they should put him in a room with the desk and just tell him he's president.
That's
just
right.
let him just,
I think he'd love that.
Yeah.
I think he wouldn't notice the difference. I mean, his sense of reality is severely challenged. Anyway, what were we saying?
Sorry, apropos of this, you also said, poor old Brendan Gleeson had to play him, and you said there's nothing to play.
Well,
it's a two-dimensional...
It's a bad part. I mean, it's a bad part because you think, where's his truth? I mean, that man wouldn't know the truth if it shat on him. He wouldn't. The guy has no idea of truth. So it's very difficult to play somebody who doesn't understand any notion of truth.
Yeah.
You've got to have a little bit of that, even if it's a sliver. But there ain't no sliver in old Donald.
Okay, so can we talk about a more rounded and perhaps likable character than Donald Trump, Hannibal Lecktor?
Yes. Infinitely more rounded. Infinitely more rounded.
There's a screening after this of Manhunter, if anybody hasn't seen it, particularly if anybody hasn't seen it projected, because that's a film that needs to be seen up on the big screen.
Yeah.
It's the extraordinary thing about Manhunter is that you're on screen for a comparatively small period of time, but that character absolutely dominates. Shall we have a quick look at an encounter with Hannibal, and then can I talk to you about what's going on?
Sure.
Okay, have a look at this.
That's the same atrocious aftershave you wore in court 3 years ago.
Yeah, I keep getting it for Christmas.
Did you get my card?
I got it, thank you.
And how is Officer Stewart? The one who was first to see my basement.
Stuart's fine.
Emotional problems, I hear. Do you have any problems, Will?
No.
No. Of course you don't. I'm glad you came. My callers are mostly clinical psychologists from Cornfield University somewhere. Second-raters, the lot.
Dr. Bloom showed me your article on surgical addiction in the Journal of Clinical Psychiatry.
And?
Very interesting. Even to a layman.
Layman? A layman? Interesting term. So many experts on government grants, and you say you're a layman. But it was you who caught me, wasn't it, Will? Do you know how you did it?
What does it matter now?
It doesn't matter to me, Will.
I want you to help me, Dr. Lecktor.
Yes. I thought so.
It's about Atlanta and Birmingham.
Yes?
You read about it?
In the papers. I don't tear out the articles. I wouldn't want them to think I was dwelling on anything morbid. You want to know how he's choosing them, don't you?
I thought you might have some ideas.
Why should I tell you?
You get to see the file on this case. And there's another reason.
Pray tell.
Thought you might be curious to see if you're smarter than the person I'm looking for.
Then by implication, you think you're smarter than me since you caught me.
No. I know that I'm not smarter than you.
Then how did you catch me, Will?
You had disadvantages.
What disadvantages?
You're insane.
So you said that you, in trying to get to that character, you were inspired by Peter
Manuel. Yeah, there was a serial killer. I mean, he was the first. Well, he was the first serial killer. I mean, I was 11, but I became obsessed by this guy called Peter Manuel. He was of Portuguese origin. He was a Scot-Portuguese, born in New York, ironically. And his brother used to sell papers at the Buchanan Street station in Glasgow. And he did this extraordinary thing where he hired a cab in Newcastle. He drove it up. The guy drove it. He murdered the taxi driver. He then walked across this golf course, met this young woman, raped her and murdered her. Then he went to, I think it was Haddington, a place called Haddington, and he murdered this family. And he was really, you know, quite something. But he was extremely smart, and he actually conducted his own defense. And I remember, I was 11 years old, but I was obsessed by him. You know, my mother used to she would not allow the Sunday pictorial in our house. So I had to buy it and hide it under the cushion so I could follow up what was going on with Peter Manuel. And I remember that he seemed so plausible.
Right.
You know, as an 11-year-old, I don't know how I got that notion of plausibility, but there was something about him which was so plausible. So when I came to play this guy, I thought what was so important was his plausibility, that he was somebody, you know, I didn't want to go down the road that certain other actors went with the role. I wanted to play the guy from his interior, what he was, you know, and, you know, I always think it's a very interesting thing about how we become the way we become. I mean, if you go into a hospital, to a birthing room, you know, where they've got all these babies lined up, and you look at all these babies, how can you pick out which one is Hannibal Lecktor? How can you pick out which one is Donald Trump? How can you pick out which one is Adolf Hitler? How can you pick out one that's, you know, somebody like, you know, what's his name? The great German Schweitzer, you know.
Well, you won an Emmy for playing Goering in Nuremberg.
Yeah.
And I mean, that must have presented a challenge to an actor.
This is the point. The point is you have to understand why people are the way they are and what decisions they make that make their life their life. Goring was a very interesting character in the sense that he was a guy who, he was a war ace. I mean, he was a flying ace. He was the most decorated, after von Richthofen, he was the most decorated air pilot. And he had a squadron. And at the end of the war, he took his squadron into Switzerland and he abandoned it there, walked back to Germany, kept on going, and eventually arrived and ended up in Sweden. And he had a nervous breakdown. And he was so disgusted by what had happened. And we always forget, you know, because Hitler dominates so much of what went on in the 20th century, particularly in that period between 1930 and 1945, and he was this. What Goring realized is that Hitler had a vision of something, and he knew, because he was felt so betrayed, particularly by the Treaty of Versailles. And we don't know what the Treaty of Versailles did to the German nation, because it punished them appallingly, absolutely appallingly. There was no need for it. But it was the fodder for Hitler to be created. Mm-hmm. And the front man for that was Goring, because he had this amazing kind of vision of Germany and what he wanted. And he felt that Hitler was the right guy for the job. So he was very, very persuaded by Hitler. But in the Night of the Long Knives, he was also very badly injured. And he was rescued by two Jewish ladies who actually helped him, because he was injured. And as a result, he actually got these two Jewish ladies out of Germany. He got them out. And nobody knew about this situation. So you realize that this was a man of tremendous humanity. And when we did Nuremberg, it was very odd because he spent, as he did with Jackson, who was this guy who was put as the main prosecutor, who wasn't able at all, he actually gave a lecture on why Germany became National Socialist, why it became Nazi. And that's what his line was. He said, you do not understand where we were at a certain point in our history. And out of that history became what happened. He was never to do with the final solution. That was something that wasn't part of him. Heydrich was, a lot of the other people were, but not him. But of course, by default, he was associated. So he was a rather brilliant man. He was a cross-dresser. He was kind of odd character. He had this extraordinary wedding with white horses and everything, but he was rather overweight and in his late 40s, and his wife was equally overweight. So when you see this wedding, it's kind of ridiculous. So he was this really interesting character, and I just thought, I was really fascinated by who they are. And you see, I don't think people become bad, but they don't start out bad. And they become bad for reasons sometimes they think they're doing good, and they actually finally end up that they're doing bad. And I think that's the thing about the human experience. And that's what, as an actor, I have to discover who that guy is. I don't judge. I never judge when I act. Because if you judge, you immediately destroy what you're trying to do. You have to present the person as they are and as they become, which is a different thing. But in essence, he wanted to do something for his country.
Okay, so if we're talking about not judging, and what you're talking about, I have to say, is kind of the reason why I still look at acting as basically some kind of alchemy. I've seen it done. I don't know how it's done. I hear you explaining it, but it's still, to me, it's unimaginable to be able to do that. In the case of a film like LIE, for example, in your book, you write that people advised you not to take that role on.
Not to do it, yeah.
Because?
Well, because he's a chicken hawk.
Which means?
Yeah, it's very difficult to describe what a chicken hawk is. He's not a pedophile, and everybody thinks he's a pedophile. There's a thing that certain gay men become obsessed with young boys between the age of sexual maturity and 18, and then it's over. And it's a sort of 4-year thing that he has, and he became very obsessive about that in that way. And the dilemma in the film is that he's also very paternal, that he wants to be a father, he wants to be caring. You know, the other stuff is there, and he lives in this horrible house. It was ironic because when we filmed in the house, we found this house which was a ex-pediatrician's house. It was in Long Island. It was off the freeway there. And when we came to the house, we were filming. It was up a cul-de-sac with the freeway used to go right there. It was a big wall, but there was the freeway, and then there was this house. And we were filming in this house, and there was the pediatrician's surgery, where there was a lot of tic-tac-toe on the floor where kids could come and play. And we didn't know it, but the surgeon had been put away as a pedophile. And it was a complete coincidence that, because one of the neighbors came up and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, somebody said, "We're making this film." And he said, "Oh, well, you know what happened here, don't you?" And he went, "No." And then he told the story of this guy. Now, ironically, the wife was still in the house, the wife of the guy. She didn't let on what was going on, but she was very, very... it was very important to her that we made that film in her house. Okay. So it was very complicated.
Well, look, let's look at a scene. This is Michael Quester, so it was an independent production. You weren't doing this for money. You were doing it because you thought it was an important piece of work, and you've always been a great supporter of independent cinema. You won a Scottish BAFTA for The Escapist. I mean, you're known for that. Let's take a look at this. What's happening in this scene, I think, that I find fascinating is that you're playing him as kind of affable, likable, but there's something else going on in there. Also, it's a very, very young Paul. Is it Dano or Dano? It is Dano, isn't it?
Paul Dano, yeah.
Paul Dano. Take a look at this, because I think from an acting point of view, this is an extraordinary piece of work.
Bonjour, Howard. Comment allez-vous, mon jeune ami?
Ça va bien, merci. Howard?
Comment ça? Vous vous appelez Howard, n'est-ce pas?
Well, yeah, but everybody calls me Howie. Only my
I'm
mother.
sorry to hear about your mother, Howard. I was a friend of hers. I can't tell you how sorry I am. Sylvia was a good woman. Mind if I join you for a minute?
Oh, no, please.
The name's Harrigan, John Harrigan. People call me Big John.
I didn't see it at the funeral. Well, at least I don't remember seeing it.
No. Regrettably, I couldn't make it. I just got back from Paris.
Oh, that's cool. How do you know I speak French?
Your mom used to talk about you all the time, Howard. She was so proud of you. Told me all about your poetry, too. You know, I had some published in England. If you like, I'll show it to you. You want a diet?
Yeah.
You like your carbs, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you finish this, I'll give you a ride back to Randolph Drive.
Okay,
I'm going that way.
Thanks, that'd be great. Oh, wow.
You like it, huh?
I mean, this is my dream car. It's the first one I've ever seen in real life.
Real life? Get in.
Oh, God, I want one.
So, you know, that thing about it's an independent film, somebody who you're working with says, don't do it. And what they mean is don't do it because you're playing a character who, you know, who the audience... What did they mean when they said don't do it?
Well, they don't do it because you're playing a character that could mark you for your career.
Could mark you?
Yeah, and that it may not serve you.
Okay.
And I think that's bollocks.
But Titus is fine.
Titus is fine, yeah, exactly.
Which is a really strange thing, isn't it?
Yeah, but this guy is the predator. He is what they call a chicken hawk.
Yeah.
So somebody said, oh, you don't want to go near that. You don't want to touch it. And of course, when somebody says that, I immediately want to do it.
Yes, because you do have a contrary streak.
I do. I'm very contrary.
Has that always been the case?
Yes.
So if somebody told you not to do something, you would do it?
Well, unless it was life-threatening, no. Yeah.
Okay. So having worked in those kind of movies, you also have, you know, blockbuster films that you're associated with. You managed, I think, quite sneakily to be in both Braveheart and Rob Roy.
Yeah.
They didn't want you to be in both of them.
No, they wanted me. It was weird because I met Mel Gibson, and ironically, he'd been offered Rob Roy. And in fact, actually, he's more physically right for Rob Roy than the guy who played it was, which was Liam Neeson. Because Rob Roy was small, wiry, had rickets, red-haired. He was, you know, not a big guy. Whereas William Wallace was actually about 6'3". And the great thing about Wallace, he led the lowland people, and they could always see Wallace because he was much taller than his tribe. Okay. And Andrew Murray, who led the Highlanders, was very short. Right. So he could be seen because he was short compared to all these tall people. And they worked together and they did a lot of amazing stuff for Scotland.
So you talked in the book about the fact that the films have two different things going for them. On the one hand, you think that Rob Roy is the better movie, although you didn't have a great relationship with the director.
No, I didn't have a great relationship with the director, but the script was fantastic. Yeah. It was Alan Sharp's script, and it was a great script. It really was a great script. And there's some great stuff in it. You know, I loved Rob Roy. And I didn't like my character. I really didn't like Killeen.
Well, you're not meant to like him, though.
No, you're not meant to like him, but the actor should have a little bit, you know, should be a bit more. But he was, I always, no, that's not it. But
no, we're gonna see, do you want to see a clip of him?
Oh, you see a clip of it?
Yeah, let's have a look. Okay.
You have not told him.
You think me such a puppet that I would put my husband's head in a noose fashion from my own dishonor?
You have a proposal for me. I can tell.
You will sign your name to a statement telling how you slew Alan MacDonald, stole my husband's money, burned our property. Before a judge, you will sign it.
And let him hang me in the toll booth for my trouble. No great inducement, Mistress McGregor.
When it is signed, You may go where you will, where you can.
I shall not soon forget, Mary, the last time I saw you. How nobly you walked from that burning like a queen.
You will sign it or else.
Or else what? You'll tell Rob how Cunningham used you? Have another picture, not so noble, of you stood in Lomond water, washing between your legs. I've wondered many a time since that morning, did you wash Archie out of you, or is he still in there, growing into his father? Yes. Yes. Well, I have a proposal for you, Mistress McGregor. Persuade your man that Cunningham alone killed his man and kept the money entirely, and I will not speak of what you have inside you. Rob would be hard-pressed to love such a bastard, would he not? But you know the saying, Mary, 'tis a wise father knows his own child, and if you'll not say anything, neither will I.
There you are.
I think he is the most horrible person I've ever played.
So is he the exception? Is he the character that you don't find?
I really was very uncomfortable playing that role.
Yeah.
I mean, I liked the role, and it was a great role to play, but he was really the fallen angel.
Yeah.
He really was the fallen angel, and his sense of vengeance was...
But it's grand theatrical writing, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it is. Well, Alan, it was Alan Sharp, and he was not afraid of it. He just went for it.
Okay.
And, and that scene, which is, she's raped earlier in the film, and he's disgusted by it when it happens. He's kind of shocked, but then he gets off on it. And that's what happens to Cullen in a way. He always, something happens, and then he sort of cogitates on it and kind of makes it into his sort of thing.
Yes.
And that was the unpleasant thing about playing the role, because you had to take that on board, that he was always doing two things at once. And it was tough. It was tough.
And yet, unlike Braveheart, it does have a good script.
Oh, what? This does?
Yeah, because Braveheart doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
It's rubbish.
It's total bollocks. No, it really is.
No, it is.
I mean, I'm slightly spoiled because I played William Wallace. I played him in a TV show called Churchill's People, way back in the early 70s. So I kind of got into him, and I thought he was an amazing character. But I mean, all that French stuff and all of that, I mean, it was just nonsense. And but that said, I loved working with Mel Gibson. I really do. I really did. He was wonderful to work with.
And again, this is something that comes up many a time in the book. There's one quote when you say, everyone in this book is either dead or cancelled. And you make a point of saying, well, everyone thinks this about somebody, but actually I enjoyed working with them. And you make a point of saying, this was my personal experience of them.
Absolutely.
That's quite a big deal for you, isn't it?
Yeah, no, because, we're living in this horrible age now where we want to cancel people left, right, and centre. And I find it hypocritical. Let him who is without sin cast the first stone. And there's a lot of casting of stones which is needless and unnecessary. I can't be doing with it. I absolutely hate the whole thing of cancel culture because it's vengeful. And you're going, from what and by who? Who is the person that's the arbiter of all this? And it's very difficult to know because it's just something that happens. It's like some kind of wayward act of artificial intelligence. Oh, we'll cancel this person or we'll get them cancelled.
And yet, when you're writing about your own work, you don't hold back if you have criticisms of people. Like, you are very forthright in your criticism of Michael Caton-Jones. You say he's more interested in the choreography of the camera than he is of the actors. And you tell a story about being on set of Chain Reaction.
Oh, yeah.
In which you say that it was an experience in which, big budget movie, and it's, Keanu Reeves and Morgan Freeman, and they have 8 writers, and you turn up on set and they don't have a script.
No, they didn't have a script.
So what do you and Morgan Freeman end up doing in the lift when they don't have a script?
Well, that was very interesting. So we're doing this extraordinary film with this guy called Andy Davis, who had directed The Fugitive and had been a big success. Yeah. So this was the follow-up, they thought. And so what happened was that, we had it, and we were doing this scene and with Morgan, and we were filming right down underneath the Chicago River. We were like 300 feet down. And there was an elevator which I was supposed to go into, and it went bang, bang, and I get shot, and that's the end of me. So and Morgan by this time had been there for quite some time, and it was really cold. And he hated Chicago because as a little boy, he was sent there to stay with his grandmother, and it was not a pleasant experience because he's from Mississippi and he's a Southern kid. So he really didn't like it. So he was there, and he was not saying anything, but so we had this scene, but there were no lines. So
how can there be no lines for a scene? I mean, surely if you get everyone, surely there must be lines.
Well, there wasn't. I'm sorry, Mark, but there wasn't. There was. We were asked to improvise, and what happened was that. So we were told it was this scene, and we didn't even know we were going to be improvising. We just thought it was a scene where we walked to the lift. Well, actually, we walked down this long track. We go into the lift, and I go up in the lift, and bang, bang, and that's done. I thought that's all it was about. Right. But the director, Andy Davis, he said, "Boys, I need dialogue." And Morgan went like this. My lips are sealed. He wasn't going to do dialogue. So Andy looked at me and said, "Brian, I need a monologue." So this was my first, this was me coming to Hollywood for the first time. And it was a long story of how it all happened. I did these films. I did Chain Reaction, and I did Long Kiss Goodnight, and then I did another film after that. But it was all boom, boom, boom. And then I did our film with Steven Seagal, which we won't even talk about. So,
oh, please do.
No. I mean, poor Steven. Interestingly enough, of all those guys, he is, of the Bruce Willises, the Schwarzenegger, he is the most left wing. That's the irony about Peter, about Seagal. He's the most left wing, which was bizarre. Anyway, where were we?
You were walking away.
We're walking, so I'm walking.
You've been told, I need a monologue, Brian.
I need a monologue. So, he said, you've got time. You can do it after lunch. So at lunchtime, I'm frantically writing this monologue for myself. I'm going through, boom, boom, boom. And I think, okay, so I get it. And I am improvising, but I get this monologue. So I do this. I'm walking down, and I'm doing this. I'm non-stop talking, and it's actually quite good because Morgan is very silent because of what's about to happen. So what happens is we're supposed to go down this pathway, 300 feet below ground, and it was cold, and Morgan hated the cold. So we were walking down, and then we had to get in this elevator. It was a real elevator. So we get in the elevator, and I think, well, that'll be the end of the shot. It'll stop there, and they'll follow the arm. No. The camera got in the elevator with us. So I'm still on camera, and I've done my monologue. And I'm thinking, what do I do now? So I think I start to sing. I don't know what to do, so I start to think, on top of Old Smoky, all covered in snow, a down heart. Can you not sing that? Can you sing something, sing Amazing Grace, because that's not in the public domain. So Amazing Grace, and I'm going, and I start singing Amazing Grace, and then bang, 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 I'm dead. And the lift opens, and my body falls out, and that's the end of the scene. But it was the most nerve-wracking thing I ever did, because, being in the elevator and suddenly realizing, I mean, they're in the elevator with us. I thought they were going to be out there. I didn't think they were going to be, but now I've got to, and Morgan's still not saying anything. He's not helping me whatsoever. So I think, well, I'll sing. And then it stopped.
One of the other things you refer to in the book, which I was kind of delighted to be in there, because I did that thing that everyone does. You get a book, you look in the index to see whether you're in it. Oh, I'm in it. I'm in it as the person who, with Simon Mayo, coined the phrase "the curse of Brian Cox."
Yes.
The curse of Brian Cox is that Brian plays a role supremely, and then somebody else wins an Oscar for playing the same role.
Don't talk about that, please. That's the story of my career.
I mean, most recently, in the case of Churchill, and you were very, very proud of Churchill.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of, you were bruised that Darkest Hour got all this attention.
Well, you see, the problem is, it's the hypocrisy of cinema. You see, originally when they did the Oscars, it was based on a year's work.
Right.
Now, it's only based on films that go out between Thanksgiving and Christmas. The year is ignored. Mm-hmm. If you don't get a film out before Thanksgiving, you're screwed. Mm-hmm. That film came out in the summer, and it was already out. And it did all right. It wasn't great, but it did okay. And I did well. I got some reasonably good notices. But of course, that film, the other film, that was released immediately after Thanksgiving, and it had a full, I mean, ours was an independent film, but it had the full 9 yards behind it. So that was very frustrating. It's not, I've got nothing against Gary, you know, I mean, that's fine. All's fair in love and war, that's fine. But it's just the fact that it's so hypocritical what they're doing, because they're not acknowledging work. You know, that's why everybody wants to get their film in between, you know, Thanksgiving and Christmas. And it's not what it should be about. It should be about the year's work.
But interestingly, you said the reason that you were really proud of Churchill was because you thought that Miranda Richardson had made you up your game so that you
Oh,
did
yeah,
your best
Miranda
work.
is one of the finest actresses I've ever worked with, and she really does make you up your game. She's very truthful, Miranda. There's no nonsense about her when she works. She's really on the money all the time, and a joy, absolute joy, and has subsequently become a great friend.
And the other example of the alleged curse is, of course, you know, you doing what I think is the definitive Lecktor, and then Anthony Hopkins winning the Oscar for, and I will say this, not you, for playing Widow Twankey. And
I'm so glad you said that, Mark. That makes me so happy. Thank you. But Widow Twankey. I never thought of that.
But you know what I mean.
I know exactly what you mean. Oh, don't. I mean, look, Tony's a great actor. There's no question about you know, his ability. And he won the Oscar, and good luck to him. The only thing I regret was the money. No, it's the money. He made a fortune after that. You know, if you win an Oscar, your price goes up, which... my price is not too bad now, but, you know.
Presumably, I mean, the success of Succession must have... I mean, you know, you have an extraordinary body of work behind you. You have made your name in theatre and on television and on the big screen. But Succession, I mean, when Succession was out over here, you couldn't go on a tube train without every single picture of every single character. I've never seen something, and I thought it was brilliant. It must have, I mean, you must be in a strange position that you must now be more in demand than you've ever been.
Well, to a certain extent, I am, but because we're on strike at the moment,
yes.
So I'm actually now doing theatre, which I'm very happy to do because I wanted to find out if I could still learn lines.
And can you?
I'm not sure. I'm still a wee bit nervous about it. I'm playing Bach in Bath.
Bach, the composer Bach?
Yes.
You're playing Bach in Bath?
I'm playing Bach in Bath. I am. Okay. I'm going to Bath to play Bach.
Okay.
And I'm so unmusical, it's not true. I failed.
And yet you know Verdi inside out. So
I know Verdi. God, you're good.
I am.
You really are good.
And then you're then doing Long Day's Journey?
I am then going to do Long Day's Journey tonight, yeah, which I'm really looking forward to.
You love the theatre?
It's a thing that's inevitable about when you come from here. And since I've been back, I've seen some really great theatre. I mean, I've seen the best theatre I've seen in years.
What have you seen? What have you loved?
This England. which I think is tremendous, and the whole story of Gareth Southgate and the English team, which I thought was a fantastic production, really, really great production by Rupert Gould. I thought was really superb. And then I saw The Motive in the Queue, which I thought was wonderful because I remember that so vividly, the Richard Burton Hamlet and Gielgud, who I subsequently worked with several times, actually, and that was fantastic. And Mark Gatiss does the most extraordinary channeling of John E.G. that I've seen. He's absolutely incredible in the show. So there's some really good stuff out there, and that's why, and that's our tradition. It's very funny. When I grew up, it was the movies. It was always the movies. I mean, because I was a working class kid. I mean, I never went to the theater. I went to the theater like literally 2 months before I worked in it. Yeah. I never went because I had a teacher who had started a thing called the Rep Club, so we went to see, and I'd never seen a live actor. In fact, Nicol Williamson, because the first thing I saw was a play called Love from a Stranger, and it was Nicol Williamson. Yeah. And the audience it was a kid's audience, and he was very rowdy, and he stopped. He walked down to the front of the stage and very quietly said, "If you go on the way you're going on, I shall leave, and I shall not come back." And he meant it. And they really shut up, which was very impressive.
But also your love of cinema, I mean, you love Danny Kaye.
I love Danny Kaye in The Court Jester. It's one of my favourite films.
Because you love...
Because it's joyous. And funny.
The vessel with the pestle and the broom is true.
The vessel with the pestle is the pellet with the poison, and the chalice with the palace is the brood that is true. Yeah. I love it.
But what do you... I mean, do you love...
that when I presented 3 films for TCM, Turner Classic Movies. Right. I got to meet Ben Mankiewicz and the crowd. They're wonderful people. TCM is a thing called Turner Classic Movies, and it's a thing I watch. My wife thinks I'm nuts, but I do watch it a lot. And we had a great time, and I went down and I chose 3 films. I chose This Sporting Life, which was Lindsay Anderson, a film that I think is a great film, again with Tracy, directed by John Ford, called The Last Hurrah. Do you know that movie?
Yes.
I think it's a wonderful movie. And, they had not spoken for 20-odd years. Right. And finally they came together on this film, and it's a marvelous film. And then I chose this. But they couldn't get this. This is so... I mean, you can get it on YouTube, but you can't get it in... I mean, it's extraordinary.
I'm going to bring our clips to an end by going back to the beginning. You mentioned Lindsay Anderson. I want to show a clip from In Celebration, because you had said this is something that you're particularly proud of.
Yeah, this is very...
Why is In Celebration so important to you? This is from 1975. It's the adaptation of David Story's stage play. Why is it important to you?
Well... It was the first time I worked with Lindsay, and I'd met him several times in preparation for it. And he just was an extraordinary man. It was difficult. He could be difficult, Lindsay, and he could not suffer fools at all.
Was it Lindsay who said to you, "Don't just do something"?
Oh, yeah, that was the thing.
What was the phrase?
Well, he said, it's a story, but the story is this. I opened the film, I opened the play, and I'm the first person on stage. And I play the youngest brother. There are 3 brothers. Alan Bates is the eldest, Jimmy Bolam is the middle, and I'm the youngest brother. And the play and the film is actually based on David Story's family. So I'm actually playing David Story. Okay. But he's a careers officer at a school, and he's just had a nervous breakdown. So he comes back up for his parents' 40th wedding anniversary. And he has to come in the room. He's the first character on stage, and he has to remember what the room was like. It's all about the books, because his father's he loves Westerns, and his father reads these sort of pulp Westerns, and there's photographs. So I have to go around the room just for about 30 seconds, even less, probably. In the end, it was probably about 20 seconds doing it. But Lindsay rehearsed me the whole morning doing this one bit. And it went on, and then finally he said, "Oh, Brian, don't just do something, stand there." That was the best note ever. Because I thought, God, yeah, don't do it, stand there. And it was a wonderful note. And that's why it was so important to me, because it was something where I played a character which was so internal and, you know, troubled, really troubled man. And Lindsay just guided me right through it.
Well, let's have a look at a brief clip from In Celebration. It said from 1975. It still looks remarkable to this day. Let's have a look.
I've often thought it. You and Colin are very much alike.
Alike?
The morality of vested interest on the one hand, and the morality of destruction on the other. In a way, you're both evangelists.
And you?
I'm not a moralist like you. Attitudes like yours are easily adopted. All you have to do is destroy what's already there.
Look, that book of yours, I think I agreed with every word. I even felt I'd written it myself. It was so true, so apt a reflection of all the indignities, the perversities, the abominations that I, and I alone at that time, I imagined had endured and suffered. And to have all that confirmed, enhanced, not by someone I never knew, but by you. And now, look at you, detached, aloof, transformed. When at long last you've identified a cancer, it is no commendation of your powers of loving to get down on your knees and give it a damn great kiss.
What would you have us do then, Andy?
I'd never give up. I'd rather run out there with a bloody gun. I would.
Yes, I really think you'd do it.
I would. What choice is there? I really would.
I remember you too, Andy. I remember you very well at school, coming home one night and devastating all of us. Me, certainly. With why it was no longer tenable a belief in God. As if belief was some kind of limb to be hacked off at will.
Oh, Steve.
Believe me. Destroy any part of it and all the rest goes with it. I don't understand. You've lived here half your life. What kind of vengeance do you have in mind?
And you know what occurred to me watching that? It kind of takes us right back to where we began, when you're talking about Spencer Tracy and the thing about not looking directly at the person he's in the scene with. The most remarkable thing about that is, firstly, you don't, except for the moments that you do, and they're very, very pointed. Yeah. It's like literally to look up for what. There's so much of it is doing exactly what you're saying that your great acting hero was doing, which is not doing the thing that's happening.
Yeah, this was really Lindsay, and also it's a great piece. This piece, yeah. Because it hasn't changed. It's about brothers who are being projected into a world that they don't understand, and it's all about getting on, about making your children better, and it's about the fact that the father is a miner, and there seems to be more dignity in the father's life than in any of their lives, because there's something very pure about being, even though it's a horrific job, but there's something very pure about it, and it's what David Story was obsessed with a lot in his writing. The fact is, why do we do what we do? Why do we go from our one class to another class? And of course, it's still happening. We are so class-ridden. That hasn't changed. That was written in 1968, and it hasn't fucking changed. It is still the same. We're still pursuing those same things, and they're still elusive and gone. And I've actually got a lump in my throat because I found that incredibly moving. Just the writing and just the sheer demand of what we did in the 60s, the kind of writing that was happening, and it's very, in a great way, deeply nostalgic. I think there's a combination of a lot of things, really. I trust instinct more than anything. You know, I'm doing a play at the moment, and I'm playing, well, I may be doing a play. I'm learning the lines, and I'm playing Bach. And there's a speech in the play where he talks about the divine spark. He talks about there's a gap, this gap between when an idea comes, when suddenly you're lost and suddenly you're open to something else. And that something else is like divine intervention, which creates the divine spark. And the divine spark lights you and makes the work come together. And I realize that that's how I work. I'm waiting for that spark that then makes the entranceway into the work that I'm about to do. And that's the exciting thing about my job. I love it. I love that. I love the fact that I'm learning something every time I do something. It's a lesson. And I work on that. I mean, I do research, of course. I don't go on about it, because I don't think it's all about research. It's about being in the moment. And it's that thing, and that's the most important thing. That's what that's about, being in the moment and having that, how do I get in the moment? And you have to make yourself available to the moment. You've got to get, I've just been working with a lot of kids. I've just done a thing called Maestro. And I was working with a lot of young kids, drama students, and they would always get in their own way, because it would be something that made, the difficulties were their difficulties. It wasn't the difficulty of the script or the difficulty, it was the fact of, I am not worthy. I don't know if I can do that. I'm not that guy. And you've got to say, that's bollocks. You've got to stop that for a start. Of course you're worthy. You're worthy because you're here, or you wouldn't be worthy. And understand your worthiness, instead of saying, oh, I'm not sure if I can do that. If you're not sure you can do it, then don't be an actor. Find another fucking job. But really don't be an actor, because the first thing you have to do is give yourself over to something and commit. It's all about commitment. And once that, and it is that thing of the divine spark. Once the divine spark is lit, go with it. And that's really what I do when I work. Well, anything that helps the theatre and anything that enhances the theatre, I think and some of the camera stuff, some of the stuff they're doing is really pretty amazing. And I think that we've learnt a lot from doing that. I'm all for it. I believe in it. I believe that we should be doing that. We should be photographing what we do, and it's great from our point of view. It's great from the audience, and it means it's available to a further to an audience beyond just that building, and that's what's important. Yeah. Well, the problem is that way madness lies. If you start going down the road of, I tend not to look at my own work. I tend to think it's past, it's done, and it's there, and warts and all, that's what it is.
You don't even watch Succession after you've shot it. You don't watch it.
I try not to watch it. My wife makes me watch, and I do watch quite a bit. But I don't like watching myself. It's not that I don't like watching myself. I'm not bad, but I just always think, why didn't I, and I just thought, oh, that's pointless, because there's so many choices you can make, and why didn't I make that choice? So that's why I don't want to watch myself, because you're playing around with the divine spark. Let it be divine and let it be sparky. That's what it's supposed to be. It is because of my background. It's also because of my father and my mother. They weren't around long enough, sadly. My dad died when I was 8, but he's still omnipresent in my life every day. Equally with my mother, who had a series of nervous breakdowns. So I saw what it was like to go from, lower middle class. We had a little shop. But my dad was overgenerous. And my mother always used to say, Brian, remember, charity begins at home. And that was a conflict that they had, I found this wonderful letter from my mother just 3 days after my father died. She wrote this letter, and she describes, and it's a phrase that nobody ever uses now, about their little misgivings, because they were, you know, they were mill workers. That's how they started. My dad was given a shop by his eldest sister. He went and worked in that shop, and then he became a sort of paterfamilias for the ghetto area that he worked in. And he would give and give and give and give and give to the point of my mother's distraction. And it was difficult. But I was aware of that. And I was certainly aware of the fact that 3 days after he's died, we got his bank book, and there was only 10 quid in the bank, you know, and there was nothing. We had nothing. So we went from one, and then my mum couldn't deal with it. She broke down. And so we went from one experience to genuine poverty, you know. And I've always thought, why is that happening? Why does that happen? And I really believe in my roots. I don't think I'm particularly working class, but I'm certainly peasant-like, you know. So I do believe in my peasantry, and in that way. And that's the ignition for me, you know.
So glad somebody else asked this question.
Well, it was in Celebration on stage, ironically. Yeah, it was on stage. And they were planning the investiture of Prince Charles for the Prince of Wales. So it shows you how it was eons ago. And what happened was there was a party in Bates's dressing room, and it was my birthday. That's right. It was my 23rd birthday. I remember it. So I had a shower, and Lindsay had given me this red shirt. It was like an Indian shirt with a collarless shirt, you know, sort of straight collar. And I'd just been in the shower, and I came into the room, and they were all there. There was Carl Toms, there was Lord Snowdon, and there was Princess Margaret, and a few sort of her, you know, team. And I happened to find myself in a corner with Princess Margaret, and she was talking about my performance, and she was saying, "Oh, I thought you were so wonderfully, wonderfully hooded. I loved the fact that you were such a hooded person, and I really wanted to know who this man was." I said, "Oh, well, thank you, Mum. That means I'm doing my job." She said, "Yes." And she said, "I believe it's your birthday." I said, yeah, it's my birthday today. She said, "Yeah, I got and I was lost, you know, I didn't know. I was talking to Princess Margaret. I thought, what did I do?" So I said, "Yeah, I got this." And I always tend to overtalk, you know, in situations like that. I said, "Yeah, I got this shirt from Lindsay, and it was my birthday." She said, "Oh, that's a beautiful shirt." And she put her hand on there, and she unbuttoned it. Like that. And I went, "Oh." And I thought, this could be embarrassing. And then she started to talk, and she started to put her hand in here, drifting towards my left nipple. And I thought, God, this is too much. What am I going? And Jimmy Bolam was behind me going, "Oh." And I was going, "This is just too much." So eventually I just said, "Oh, sorry, man, I got to go. Sorry, I've forgotten something in the dressing room." And I left quickly. That was a near miss. I love the radio. The radio is my favorite medium. It really is. I mean, you know what it's like. You don't have to wear makeup. You don't have to know your lines. You don't have to. It's all there, and and we are exemplary in our radio drama, you know, and that's a tradition that we should never lose, because it's fantastic, and you learn a lot by doing radio, and McLeavey is a gift. There's a TV series, which you can get on YouTube, I believe, called...
Brian, you need to stop saying that things are on YouTube, okay?
Which is called The Devil's Crown, in which I do indeed play Henry II, with wonderful Jane Lapotaire as Eleanor of Aquitaine. It's rather good. And at the time, it was rubbish, particularly by that Australian, Clive...
Anderson?
No.
No. James.
Clive James. He hated it. And it was reviewed in The Observer. It was a terrible review. But now, when I look at it, it's so ahead of its time because it's all done in the studio, and literally I go from set to set. Oh, there it is, yeah. And I had my hair, I dyed my hair red for it as well. My God. No.
Can we just have a round of applause for Nick for having that still?
Oh, yes, thanks. Well, let me say, I love working with tried and tested, directors that are just beginning, because there's a rawness about them and there's an enthusiasm about them, and sometimes they're a pain in the arse, but on the whole, I mean, really, really good. And Wes was very interesting, except when we did the scene, which is a wonderfully funny scene, the Guggenheim scene with young Jason Schwartzman, he kept directing Jason. He would make Jason Schwartzman say a line again in the middle of the scene. He would stop and say that line again. And I had to remonstrate with him. I said, Wes, we need flow. And we can't get flow if you keep constantly fucking interrupting. We need flow, because the humor of the scene is in the flow. If you don't let the flow happen, there's no humor. So we have to have flow. He completely ignored me and continued to give, what's his name, Jason, that note. So, but on the whole, I mean, I worked with a young, I did a thing called The Escapist, which I'm particularly proud of.
Which you won a Scottish BAFTA.
Which I won a Scottish BAFTA from. I would not win an English BAFTA for that, but I did win a Scottish BAFTA. But it was a really interesting film. It was a film that came to me, I'd worked with Rupert Wyatt, wonderful young director, and I'd done a short film for him, which he won a BAFTA prize for. And then he came and he asked me to do the film version, the full film version of that. And again, it was a cameo, and I was being a bit grandiose. Yeah, I was. So I said, I don't mind playing centre back sometimes, but occasionally I like to play centre forward in a film. I'd like to be, the operator, the motive in it. And so he went away and he wrote the script. Him and his partner, his writing partner, wrote the script of The Escapist. And I just thought, Rupert, I'm going to put this script in a safe, because I know that you're going to have the world and his wife give you notes on the script, tell you what you should do, what you shouldn't do. What you've done, I think, is it. And this is the film that we'll do the dance. We'll do the dance with everybody, but this is the film we'll make. And that was the film we made. And I remember I was also one of the producers on it. And I remember what we had this morning where on the call sheet was, they dig a tunnel. And I thought, we've got half a morning for digging a tunnel? I said, that's never going to work. And I had to go to Rupert and I say, look, Rupert, digging a tunnel, it's not going to work. We're not going to get it. He said, I know what I'm doing. I said, oh, sorry, okay. And he did this, and they digged the tunnel, and it just happened that one of the actors hit against the wall, and a bit of the wall falls away, and immediately we start digging a tunnel. And it was over in about 50 seconds, it was gone. And, you just have to trust. And some of these, so I've always liked working with young directors. I really do. I like their vulnerability. I like the fact that they are beginning, that they're actually there and they want to do something. And it's great. You have to switch off. I mean, I think that we're transmitters. I think we are transmitters of energy. I don't, you know, there are a lot of actors, and I've worked with a few, and there's nobody there. I mean, and they get very sort of involved in what they do, and that's fine. Their commitment is great, but they give themselves a hard time. And I kept saying, you know, it's only and my mother used to say, Brian, it's only a play. You know, and it is the word play, you know, that's what it is. So that playing element is very important, that you come at it lightly. It could be the most incredibly deep piece of work, but always come at it lightly. Come at it with a good open heart, and then it works for you. But if you come in thinking, trying to make it some kind of spiritual experience, it'll never work. I mean, it'll work if you're a particularly fantastic actor, fair enough. But I just think you've got to be able to turn on a dime. You've got to be able to do all the kinds of things. You know, I did this video. There's an interesting video on YouTube in which I teach this young boy, he's 2.5, and I teach him Hamlet's to be or not to be speech. And it's a fascinating video because he is extraordinary. I mean, I was staying with a friend of mine one Christmas, just before Christmas, and this kid, he had this language he could speak, and he was 2.5, and I taught him to be or not to be. Now, he started it, and it's quite a funny video, it really is. But at one point, he drifts off, and he goes off as a child should do. You know, because a child has not got the best concentration at the best of times. But so that one let that happen. But then he would come back. He would come back to the moment. And then you gave him an idea, and he would follow through on it. He wasn't doing any research, because he was 2.5. 2.5-year-olds, I don't believe, do any research. But so it was wonderful to see this kid do something which is what we should all be doing as actors. Not being distracted in the same way, but certainly that relationship with the text, which is, I mean, there's a wonderful moment when I say, to be or not to be, that is the question. And he went, And I said, no, that is the question. It is, he kept saying, it is. And I thought, this is astonishing what this kid's saying. It is the question. Of course, it is the question. He was amazing.
Well, look, that's a perfect note to end on. I want to say thank you to the BFI for having us. Thanks to Heather for producing the show. Thanks to Nick for doing the clips. Thank you to everybody here for your questions, which have been terrific.
Absolutely. And your presence.
There is a screening shortly after this of Manhunter. Brian, I think you and I are going to do a brief introduction to it.
Yes.
Yes. But please join me in thanking, for a magnificent evening, the great Brian Cox.
Thank you.